Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, MD.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to AM Impact on Your Health. AM Impact on Your Health, where every day our goal is to have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. AM Impact on Your Health is heard each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. AM Impact on Your Health, where each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, and fascinating health topics, and of course, where we do encourage you to call in to join in. Folks, this is a Friday version of the show. It's going to be different, and it's going to be much different than you planned on. Here's what I mean. Our guest, David Brownstein, called me on Wednesday evening. He's been called out of town, and is going to be unable to be our guest today, as much as we have been anticipating his arrival to talk about his book, The Soy Deception. He was nice enough to reschedule with us. He will be here on the 28th of October, so that's one gear switch that you have to make. But we have a guest just surfaced the other day that'll be perfectly placed in his place. His name is Daniel Brinkley. He's affiliated with what's called the Twilight Brigade, and he's involved in a national program that launches on 11/11/11, having to deal with terminally ill veterans of foreign wars. Anyway, this is a national movement we'd like to bring a spotlight to bear on. Today, Daniel Brinkley is going to be our guest, member of Twilight Brigade. Let him explain exactly what this new program that is about to be launched entails. If in the course of our discussion with Mr. Brinkley, you want to call in to ask a question or to make a comment, the number, of course, as always, will be 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262. Now, up-and-coming schedule, of course, you can make the changes with Dr. David Brownstein. On Monday, we'll open it up. I jotted down a number of things I wanted to bring to your attention. One thing I'll bring to your attention right now, because we did spend some time on it this week, introducing you to the HCG testing to detect cancers. This will take it out of your hands now with the test that used to be only obtained in the Philippines, called the Dr. Navarro test. It was a urine test, and as so many of these first-generation tests are, it was plagued with a lot of potential error, a lot of false positives there, because it couldn't differentiate between HCG, FSH, LH, and TSH. And so it could be giving people the false sense of that they have a cancer when in fact they don't. HCG testing followed the trophoblastic theory of how cancers develop, and that this substance called HCG, which is you're very familiar with, called the pregnancy hormone, is available in minute quantities in all cancers, certainly unbeknownst to the general public before, but now available here in the office. We have all kits are in. If you have the desire to want to get this testing, you don't have to do the testing on your own and prepare the specimen on your own, as you had to do with the Philippines test. There's a laboratory. Dr. Emil Shandel, the representative of that laboratory, was our guest on Monday. It's the only laboratory in the country, I believe, that has such sophisticated testing as radioimmunoassay and immunofluorescence, able to detect a cluster of cells, cancer cells, as little as 12. That's phenomenal. Anyway, the test available now. Call up for scheduled time to come on in and pick up a kit if you have an interest in it. Of course, too, I'm looking into the month of November. Don't forget we got Roland Thomas, who's going to be one of our guests here, coming up on the 7th of November. He is the gentleman who paired up with none other than Dr. Michael Kiriak, the Soviet scientist, to help develop a product line referred to affectionately as BAC, B-A-C, that of course stands for Bioengineered Algae Concentrates. It is a all-inclusive, as I say. It has all vitamins, all minerals, even traces, amino acids, essential fatty acids, all enzymes. I've never seen a product that has all of it wrapped up into one, and that ultimately can be a quite economical way to handle supplementation. They can get pretty expensive, as I'm guessing. So, Roland's going to be our guest on the 7th. Susan Smith-Jones, she'll be back with us on the 9th. And in preparation for the up-and-coming holidays, and they are around the corner, folks, 10 tips not to gain weight over the holidays. That'll be on the 9th. Thanksgiving's coming up in a month. That's the way we have it right now. We'll let you know as we add more to our list of up-and-coming guests. On Monday, we're going to spend some time talking about Dr. Robert Rowan's most recent edition of his Second Opinion. Many of you out there do get Rob Rowan's Second Opinion newsletter monthly. This particular newsletter this month has pretty hot topics, and many of which we've taken on here, and to see them written in print and give you an opportunity to get another perspective from another doc is always something that we cherish. And we'll be talking about Dr. Robert Rowan's Second Opinion with respect to cataracts, naltrexone, low-dose naltrexone to be used in cancer therapy, as well as he finally exposes the fatty acid issue in collaboration with Brian Peskin, who you know very, very well from listening to this show. We'll do that on Monday. We'll also talk about on Monday the new recommendations just coming down the pike from the governmental agency on PSA. That's prostate-specific antigen. I told you the other day, you probably saw in local newspapers, how this is no longer being considered as a necessary, and actually telling you it should not be ordered to detect prostate cancer. This is pretty important when you consider that the governmental agency is the same one who declared 2 years ago that mammograms were not to be taken in anybody who is in the age of 40, in their 40s, and said that it should be taken only every other year in their 50s. And once a governmental agency does that, although a doctor can order the test, it sets up the stage around the corner for insurance companies who can be denied the patient's ability to be reimbursed for that and to pay for the service. So PSA now lumped in with mammograms. We'll talk about them both on Monday, and we'll let it go at that. Okay, let's take a short break, folks. In the interim, having switched gears from Dr. Brownstein, who respectfully declined the ability to come this morning, he's out of town, we're going to be with him on the 28th, but in batting up in the number 1 spot, Daniel Brinkley, a member of something called the Twilight Brigade. Let's find out what's happening on 11/11/11. Be right back.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. Have you become confused about how best to manage your health? It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instruction, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you are looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Honey, just got the word. The company's new health plan has a $5,000 deductible. We have to make sure nobody gets sick this year. Remember what those doctors meant this cost for last year's colds and flu? Oh, sorry, I gotta go. Love you.
We can do this. We can cut the fast food lunches. Soda, that's a lot of sugar. We could all take that evening walk. And hey, I heard a program about fruit. Fruit of the spirit. What did they say? 1 ounce, the equivalent of 5 servings of fruits with herbs and minerals. We could add some to our breakfast protein shakes. Fruit of the Spirit is a unique whole fruit parade. Fruit of the Spirit contains fresh fruits native to the Holy Land
and alkalizing minerals from the Dead Sea with no added sugars. Food the Spirit's unique product from 5 years of work from science-based nutritional experts. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit the Spirit, convenient, affordable, and delicious. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to AM Impact on Your Health. Heard here on KHB 620 each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney with you today on a Friday version of the show, slightly different. It isn't really a get 'em up out of town version, in that we're not going to quite open it up to you to set the agenda today. Instead, pinch hitting for our good friend Dr. David Brownstein is a gentleman who I've just come to know by someone you know very well. Of course, her name is Beth Clay. She's been on our show many times. She was associated with Dan Burton's staff a while back, but she's now on her own, and she is completely entrenched in Washington politics stuff. Anyway, she contacted me by email this past week suggesting, would I consider bringing this gentleman on the show? His story is so enthralling that I said, got to do it. Absolutely, and this morning clicked, and so we have with us today none other than Daniel Brinkley, a member of something called, we're going to find out what it is, the Twilight Brigade, and the launch of a national program coming up on 11/11. Let's say good morning to him now, and welcome to our show, Daniel. Nice to have you aboard.
Thank you very, very much, and I'd also like to thank Beth Clay. She is also a Twilight Brigader, so she's a member of the family.
Well, you know what?
I appreciate being on your show.
Well, you know, Beth, she's so much, and now to hear that she's a member of the Twilight Brigade, we better start with, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then ease us on into what the Twilight Brigade is and how you become a member?
Okay, my name is Daniel Brinkley. I'm from Aiken, South Carolina. I write books for a living, screenplays, TV shows. I'm working on National Geographic specials. But I served in the United States Marine Corps. And in the course of going through the Marine Corps, you discover a lot of things, Dennis, about war that is not all as wonderful as we make out. And as the years have passed, I've discovered that human beings were not designed to organize themselves into conflict. Because long after war is over, there are so many other issues that come up. And now with the work of Congresswoman Kathy Rogers, we're discovering that once a person is deployed, the whole family is deployed somewhat. And we're now in the middle of the longest war this country has ever fought. 10 years we've been at war. And so a lot of those issues have come forward. So a long, long time ago, I was struck by lightning. And I was declared clinically dead for 28 minutes. I was completely paralyzed for 6 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, and it took me 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. And I discovered what a person who goes through the end-of-life care process, I discovered what it was all about. And I think I was my very first hospice patient. So my father was a World War II veteran, a disabled veteran, and a lot of times I would go with him when he went to the VA. And I discovered what end-of-life care was like for veterans. And as I started to look at these issues and the fact that I had what is now commonly known as a near-death experience, and I had this experience before it had a name, before Dr. Raymond Moody had written his landmark book, Like Afterlife, and now everybody is beginning to look at the near-death experience. Sanjay Gupta has just written a book about it, and there's probably Dr. Jeffrey Long just finished writing a book. They're teaching nurses in nursing school what to do about people who have had this. So many people are being brought back, Dennis, in cardiopulmonary resuscitation and advancements in medical technique, that it's becoming almost a mainstay, not just a passing phenomena. So as this happens, I began to look at all the issues of what we do not face. 78% of all families never talk about death till after it happens. And I think that that's just a little too late. So I began to look at the issues that surround a veteran. A veteran has a lot more issues, and their families have a lot more issues. Post-traumatic stress disorder, probably brain trauma, these kind of issues, and plus what happens to people in war. And I began to look at these issues and see that the process of transition from this world to the next, and there is for sure a world after this one, what they go through. So I began to become a hospice volunteer. And I am now, I've been a hospice volunteer for 34 years. I've accrued almost 27,000 hours at the bedside. I've been with 2,004 people in the final stages of this life, and I have been at the bedside of 417 people when they took their last breath. So I have a pretty good broad perspective viewpoint of this issue that we call death. I watch families and what families go through. I watch what veterans and their families go through. And so I decided that I had to do something. So after studying it for like 15 or almost 20 years, I decided that we had to have an organization that was a bedside support system for hospice. So a group of friends and I created what is now called the Twilight Brigade.
That's the Twilight Brigade. Those that sit at the bedside of an afflicted individual in those final stages of life, passing to the afterlife.
And what you got to do is, most people are so ill-equipped, Dennis, to deal with the subject, because we're all afraid we're going to hell. And we're so driven by religions and institutions and governments that we really don't know how to handle it. So I worked with a group of experts in looking at this and realizing what I went through in that 2-year period, the things that a person goes through. And we created a program, and it's the Twilight Brigade. It's in almost 6,000 people in 22 states. And we created a program that not only gives you the tools to know what to ask and what to talk about and how to help people understand the value of their life and how precious and wonderful this life is and the rare privilege to have had it. And it also helps a person begin to understand their own issues and how to empower their own life and how not to be afraid of something that's inevitable. I always ask this question: what's the number one cause of death in America? And the answer is birth.
So
if you do this, but once you put that into perspective, Dennis, we celebrate birth. Well, we should celebrate transition from this world to the next. We should also begin to, with our hearts, believe that war must be thought unthinkable. It is what we're seeing happening to our nation and what we see happening in other nations. We're in 5 wars that we know about and 6 more wars that we don't. And the drain on the American economy and the American mentality and the moralistic nature in the 21st century of what we're seeing and what is happening, we have to have outgrown this. So what I decided to do with Beth and the team that's now the Twilight Brigade is to create a program that can be standardized, that can be put into the VAs, that can be put into nursing homes, and to empower that family member to help that veteran or other family member have a quiet and safe and peaceful transition. I promise everybody, whoever they think they lose, they will see them again from the experience that I've been through. So as we celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, a war that killed 600,000 Americans killing each other, we're in the 10th year of the longest battle we've ever fought, and we have 11-11-11. That comes once every 100 years. And 11-11-11 is Armistice Day, or Veterans Day, or the secession of the war to end all wars. And we decided that we would create a campaign that would create awareness of the issues of what Veterans Day really is. It isn't just another day off. It's a day to stop for a moment and think about what a veteran and their families are going through, and to think about those who have served and sacrificed, and second, to think about those who make it home. In my period doing the Vietnam business, usually 2 out of 10 made it. Now 8 out of 10 are making it with severe wounds. And without thinking about the pressure that puts on the family, Dennis, and what happens to a parent or a set of parents who are looking at retirement, who have a child that comes home that is literally helpless or severely wounded and loss of limbs, we have to look at this as an American culture. So we've decided to create the 1111campaign.org, and I beg everybody to go there. And what it represents is 3 things. The awareness of what 1111 means. It's not just another holiday. And for us to get involved, we who have served in the military, and what people aren't paying attention, that 50% of those who have been deployed are reservists. They're National Guards people, never trained to go into 130 degrees and take combat on in this issue. So we ask 3 things when you go to 1111campaign.org. If we ask that you join, become a part of the program, all the information is on the Twilight Brigade, number 1. Number 2, we ask for donations because we don't take federal funds. We live off of grants, and that the grace of a lot of people. Steven Seagal, Terry Fader, these are recognized names, and these are movie stars and people who are talent. They support us. And we ask for people's prayers. When you look at the works of Larry Dossey and the studies on prayer as willful conscious intent, you see some terrific results. And in those 3, if we take those 3 positions and we support this program, we want to create a brigade of consciousness and look at what's happening and look at the articles and the newsletters that we write on the Twilight Brigade and get involved in helping these families deal with the issue of loss and grief and help these families better be able to cope with what happens in the aftermath of war.
Well, letting you just
sorry,
No.
Sorry, I got a little long-winded there. I'm sorry.
You can tell that you should be a writer of books because the way that you were able to construct that story was accurate, appropriate, on point, and you absolutely have my and all my listeners' attention, I'm sure. I'm going to back up just a bit, sort of rehash what I've learned, because, as I say, much of this is just unfolding now as we're meeting one another. But your own personal situation where you, in fact, you were given up as, if you were in hospice, you were given up as dead, okay? You were assumed that you were going to die. And so I don't know what you can recall of that when you finally had awareness once again, but as you were being cared for in an era where death really in hospice was so early, if even available at all, how did you look at how you were treated during that critical time frame, which looks to me somewhere between 2 to 4 years?
People have no idea how to deal with it. Families don't know how to deal with it. Medicine didn't. This is 1975, Dennis.
Yeah, this is a while back, sure.
People have no idea how you deal and cope with this issue. We all think that death is the end of something when I know it's the beginning of something. And as I look back through the years, I am so very proud of taking the stance to help people begin to understand that they don't care what the weather is outside. They care about that their life has value and that they have meaning. And one of the most important things is how to help a person discover the value of their life. We're so taught to not think of ourselves as valuable and important. That everybody has a mission in this life, and this life is a precious gift. It's one of the rare privileges that a spiritual being gets to have in a mental, physical opportunity to create, to be involved, and to make a difference. And I realized as I would sit at the bedside in the early years, because I knew Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who really brought hospice to America in the 70s. It did not take hold till the 90s. It has now not become a very involved, it's now developing into what we call palliative and hospice care. Because we've always lived in the curative. We're going to save you from something that inevitably happens each and every time, instead of looking at the quality of life. And this is my biggest driving issue. We all are going to pass from this world, and we have to start looking at palliative, which is quality of life and ensuring maintenance and the best possible health care, and hospice, 6 months or less. It is effective, and once a person realizes that, and someone has a trained capability, Dennis, to ask the right questions, and think of this. When a person is in those stages where all of us, especially in my age group, the baby boomer age group, we are watching them pass every day. When you stop and think of this, what is your favorite song and why? You can take a person lying in a bed with an illness back to the happiest moment they ever had, and you can explore that moment with them so that they go back and appreciate their life and look at the joy that came in their life instead of dealing with sadness and pain. And many of these techniques we have developed for the Twilight Brigade, and many of these skill sets, you begin to realize not only do you lose the fear of death, you gain the power of service. And who we have, and we look at what's coming back with the issues of our present-day combat veterans, our Vietnam era, our World War II, and our Korean. Most people, Dennis, never realize that we have to develop coping skills to help those people who are transitioning. We have to look at grief, bereavement, and trauma as a conscious perspective, and we have to unite. Most people never put into perspective that we are losing between 73 and 80,000 veterans every 30 days.
Wow.
When you start looking at that number, and you start looking at the families that are defective, I promise, this is going to be an issue that will rise in American culture. By the time the next presidential election comes around, we'll be at 90 to 100,000 a month. And not looking at health care, not being able to be prepared to deal with our family or our friends who are losing family, especially our veterans and those who are passing. And we are losing our great American heroes. Most people think we've been in war. A war can only be declared by Congress. So the last war we were in was World War II. There are 2.5 million World War II veterans, and about 1,000 of them pass from this world every day. It's about 1.9 million Korean veterans, and theirs is around 200 or 300 a day. Then we move into the Vietnam era, which is 7.3 million. So when you start to look at where my age group and that 7.3 million and their families have to deal with loss, everybody needs to be a Twilight Brigader.
Right.
Everybody needs to take this training. Everybody needs to go to the 1111campaign.org, join, donate. We hope everybody will donate $11 or $111 or $1,111. And we hope that they add their prayers, because you can immediately start putting everybody has a different way they structure prayer. But prayer is a non-local power that we've explored in complement and alternative medical practices and seen the results. So I am so thankful that you have this show, Dennis, and I'm even more thankful that because of you and Beth, I get to get on and I get to talk about, I know most people don't get thrilled about the word death, but I have an affinity to it, and I have spent now over half of my life studying the process of what happens to people and what they think. And I think that we all can make a difference once we look at this thing we call death. We put it into perspective in our lives so that we can really enjoy living this life as the rare privilege it is.
Very, very powerful words. I'm going to go back because you mentioned her, and I had already jotted down her name because as you were speaking, Kubler-Ross, in the area of the 1975 era, yes, she was published. She published her book in the 70s, and Kubler-Ross came up with various stages of death. And
yeah, On Death and Dying was her book.
On Death and Dying. And there were certain stages, she says, everybody goes through. They go through them either rapidly or slowly. But ultimately the stage of acceptance is one that you reach at the doorstep at the right and appropriate time, and the death becomes potentially the beautiful thing that you're trying to create, and the imagery that you're forming with your words. So is it that knowing her, because you said you knew her personally, that
oh, yes,
the Kubler-Ross stages, is this the intention of the trained person to be able to take people through these stages? Do you believe in the stages that Kubler-Ross wrote about? Do you see people accelerate this ability? I had to remember one thing that she had mentioned when she wrote her book was she felt that dying of cancer was the most wonderful way to die, which is abhorrent to most. People say, oh my God, on my worst nightmare, I would not want to have cancer and die from cancer. Yet Kubler-Ross said because it's a very slow process most times, that this is an ideal way for people to move through these stages as compared to somebody who has a heart attack and never has a chance to jump through them. How do you feel about that? Is that accurate on my part in terms of how I interpret Kubler-Ross as I read her back then? Because it's been a while since I've read her.
Well, Elizabeth was a pretty phenomenal person. And in those stages, most is denial, then anger, then bargaining, and then acceptance. When you go, and this is the evolution of the human spiritual consciousness, first you're angry, why me? Then there's denial, first is denial, and then there's anger. Then there's bargaining. Oh, Lord, if you just let me get through this, or please come up with another treatment, or look at another random trial, double-blind study. And then comes acceptance. In dealing with cancer, which is usually slow and progressive, the whole family gets involved either in it, and a lot of people deal in denial for a lot longer than they should. Okay, I prefer the heart attack, and I don't need to go through those stages. I have accepted death. I have already been through the stages. I was my very first hospice patient, Dennis. They sent me home because they didn't know what to do. They had no idea what hospice was in 75. And so what they do is they just send you home. And then I learned to walk and feed myself, and I had to go through a lot of passing out and blacking out and a lot of things that happen when you get electrocuted. But Elizabeth's concept, excuse me?
No, I'm saying it. Listen to that story where you were just sent home. They didn't know what to do with you. Did you have a mental acumen this entire time? I mean, you knew maybe you couldn't communicate, but were you completely mentally aware and intact during this period of time? When most
oh yeah.
So what a terrible place to be where you couldn't communicate. I'm guessing, and the people around you couldn't hear words from you, and yet how you were dealt with is something that has to be so clear, and more than likely dealt inappropriately. You weren't dealt with in a very appropriate way at all, I'm guessing.
That's what called me to action. That's why the 11/11 campaign. Don't wait till you get into a place or that someone you love gets into the place of where I was. People cannot deal with these things. They have no mechanisms to deal with it because it's all fear-driven. Most of our consciousness of what we deal with every day is based on what we're afraid of, not what empowers us. What the lone assassin, the terrorist plot, some car dealer is joining forces with the Mexican mafia to assassinate someone. That's the most ridiculous stuff. That you hear it every day, but that stuff is ridiculous. Some reason to attack Iran, but when you look at these issues, Dennis, and you look at it personal to each and every one of us, and you are so ill-equipped that you hope the minister can handle it, okay? You hope the psychologist or the psychiatrist can handle it, but it's you who has to learn to handle it. I lived in a world where it was completely changed because I discovered there was a life after death. And I discovered it, and I became so engrossed in what death was and what happens. And Elizabeth really started this movement toward palliative and hospice. We all have to get involved in our own life, and part of our life is this thing called death. And the more you get involved in it, the more at peace you come with a part of the priorities about living, loving, supporting, and enjoying this life. So the group of people who have come together to create the Twilight Brigade, if anyone wants to look at it, it's TWilightBrigade.com, 1111campaign.org, and come get involved. We must bring ourselves to the place to look at this thing called death, because what's really happening, Dennis, it is not that we're going to leave this world, and not to condemn the health care protocols that we see each and every day, but they have a tendency to prolong life and include severe pain. And when Elizabeth said, because most people, the fear of death is there, but the fear of the pain of watching what people go through the process is just as traumatic as the event that generates grief and bereavement in the individuals who have lost a person. But it's by step through this cancerous state, you really see that the human psyche does go through these things: denial, anger, bargaining, and then acceptance. But the Twilight Brigader, someone trained in the art form of asking open-ended questions, being able to learn to be present and to listen, being able to support this, because we will lose millions of veterans, and that will affect their families, their children, their grandchildren, their brothers, their sisters. And look at what we have now. When you look at the situation of us not really dealing with it, we probably have 25 active duty veterans killing themselves every day. The suicide rate is overwhelming in veterans because they can't deal with the fact of what has happened. If you stop for a moment, Dennis, and think about this. If you go into a situation where you soften the target, that means you bomb the crap out of them, and then you put napalm in, and then you go into a village and you see children alive still burning from white phosphorus, which is napalm, and you see animals and you see people who were supposedly your enemy, but what you see is a human being. And then you come home and you think that goes away? No, it does not. Look at what's happening to our kids who are coming back with PTSD because war was not meant to exist in a fight or two every once in a while, but not collective war. And I've noticed there's been a 58% increase in Vietnam-era veterans turning to the VA because of reoccurring nightmares, because of post-traumatic stress. We all become some kind of holic, a workaholic, an alcoholic. We become something to avoid the issues of facing what we know we have done in combat and in war. And the damage it does to families. You know, the military has one of the highest abuse rates in of any other demographic, and child abuse, because the men and women can't handle normal pressures because they're geared to react and then PTSD. I will fight these things to the last breath. I will defend the veteran, but I will find ways and issues through this program and through this campaign, the 1111 campaign, and I am begging people to come and help us. Be a part, donate, and add prayer to your life and looking at where we are. I am not against anything, Dennis. I am for something. I am not against war. I'm for peace.
One final thing, and then I want to leave it behind, because it's what you're about to do that I think you should be so commended for. But in your own personal case, you say you were, when you were struck by lightning, you were essentially dead for 29 minutes. Did I hear you say that?
28 minutes.
28 minutes. And this near-death experience that we've written about, I've never been able to talk to somebody who had it, who had an experience like this. Did you take those steps for it? Did you go down a long white? Did you see a bright light? Did you?
I went through the standard. Now, what is the standard? Lifting out of your body, watching them try to resuscitate.
Oh, you did you?
Oh, yeah.
So your perspective is one of those. Well, really becoming more and more frequent, certainly not less. But this is why you're
more and more frequent.
Yeah, much more frequent. Okay.
The best advances of good science, Dennis. I mean, you know, the only people whose fault it is that people are having near-death experiences is the advancement of the scientific community. We are creating so many life-saving techniques that people are being resuscitated. In my time, if you didn't have oxygen to your brain for 5 minutes, you were declared dead or you were going to be a vegetable. Well, I don't mind saying that might be part of the problem I had, but let me add another part. In 1989, I had heart failure from complications from being struck by lightning. I had to have open heart surgery, and I watched the surgery from above, floating above it. I guess because of being struck by lightning, I got being out of my body down pat. And I watched it. I had a second one of these experiences. Then in 1997, because of complications from open heart surgery and being struck by lightning, I had 3 subdural hematomas and a massive grand mal seizure, and I had to have brain surgery. And I experienced the same series of events.
Did you watch that surgery too?
I watched that one. I think the thing that listen to this, Dennis, the thing that most amazed me, and people who've never had this or who don't believe it's existing, is because they're not reading the material that's coming forth. I never could understand why they only shaved half of my head. I was watching them from above, preparing to put this cage and this drill to drill holes in my head, and I never could understand why they only shaved half of your head. And that was a big issue. It worried me, even though that I was having a near-death experience. I couldn't figure it out. And the doctor, I had to ask them why, and it was because most women can't stand to have their head shaved, and so they only shave the parts of where they're going to do the surgery. So it was a pretty amazing ordeal. But if anyone who wants to read about the Danyon experience, you can go to Amazon and punch my name up. Just punch up Dannion on Amazon, and I have written 3 books on this: Saved by the Light, At Peace in the Light, and The Secrets of the Light. Just things that I've discovered being in hospice and have gone through this 3 events in a 22-year period. And today I'm writing a new book called 10 Things You Need to Know Before You Go. And it's an overview of what I've learned about this. What is important is that we as a nation, we as spiritual human beings, collectively come together and use this campaign, 1111campaign.org, or TwilightBrigade.com, which will take you to both places. We have to bring ourselves and organize change. We have to stop the madness, put our country in balance and put our country in place, and realize that we have to find coexistence. And I want, by taking the end-of-life care, to back-engineer quality of life in people so that they live fully, positively, and fearlessly in this life, that's a rare opportunity that it is and we have been given.
All right, now, I've got to tell you that I've heard of near-death experiences, but you're the first, I think, I've ever come across where you have the phenomenon of repetitive near-life experiences, even when you weren't in an experience where you should be dying. You were in a surgery, okay? That's a different situation. Nonetheless, is there anybody else that has this documented repetitiveness with this? Because I only know of one-timers, and that's enough of a one-time experience for them. The fact that you lived through it 3 different times and relived the near-death experience where you were overhead watching your own surgeries, isn't that really unique? I don't know of anybody else that ever speaks to that.
Well, I'm sure there's nothing unique about me, except that I'm obsessive compulsive. And when you go through this, the so-called illness I have called obsessive compulsive personality disorder, I will do a study. What got me so involved in all of this, Dennis, is watching how crazy people are to think that this does not happen. And then having over a 22-year period, remember, between the first one and the second one was 14 years. And between the second one and the third one was 7 years. So I had a lot of time in this 22-year period to really pay attention. And I've probably talked to more than 1,000 people who've had this experience. And you got to also remember, Dennis, that a lot of people who speak of the near-death experience, they have out-of-body experiences, but it's not really the near-death experience. It's just Raymond Moody gave it a name, the near-death experience, and the NDE. And by giving it that name, people house a lot of mystical or spiritual events in that name under that heading. But I know of several people who've gone through multiples of these.
Oh, you do, do you?
I know people, Dennis, who've gone through multiple near-death experiences in the same day and been resuscitated. I mean, I had a 94-year-old evangelical fundamentalist Christian who went from fire and brimstone to utter love and peace in the course of almost a day and a half of having 3 near-death experiences. So I am positive there is nothing unique about me other than I decided to make it a life's work to reduce the fear of death and then to empower the fact that war is unnecessary.
Wow. Let's say you got a promise to come back one day in the future to talk about this phenomenon in your other books, okay? But I'd like to hone in with the amount of time we have remaining on this up-and-coming launching on 11/11 of your new project dealing with veterans, and the fact that you literally are asking for people who might like to do so to become trained in how to be a member of your Twilight Brigade and assist veterans in this death and dying process. How does
and assist their own loved ones, Dennis.
Yeah.
I focus on veterans because we as a nation, we owe them. We owe these people who went and sacrificed and went through this and are having a lot of mental and emotional, physical and psychological byproducts. Look what Agent Orange has done to millions of people. But to help to be able to create a consciousness in this nation of the love of life instead of the fear of death. And anyone can go to thetwilightbrigade.com or .org, they both go to the same place, or the 1111campaign.org. And everything is there, all the information. I want to build a trained brigade of dedicated individuals that first want to help in the process of what a family goes through when they're losing a loved one, but what a veteran goes through, because most veterans have alienated their families because no one understands what you've been through. I mean, kids tell me today, because I sit among veterans all the time, they say, you know, we went to Fallujah and America went to the mall. We are not engaged in this war and this conflict we're in, and we're not engaged in it personally and emotionally. And the moment a deployed individual returns, that is the first thing that they notice. No one really knows what they've gone through, and I know that we care, but they don't seem to see that we care.
Okay, appreciate that. This training, how long? If someone volunteers and gets to your website, and I want them to go, which is twilightbrigade.com or 1111campaign.org. You say you will train. People can be trained. How formal is that training? How long does that training take? Give us an idea.
It's a weekend.
It's a weekend.
A Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday. In order to meet the national standards set out by the Palliative and Hospice Foundation, you have to have 20 hours. I can tell you without any question, there is no greater hospice end-of-life care program better than the Twilight Brigade. It's a weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Held all over the country or in special places?
Well, it just depends on, we go everywhere. I mean, we're everywhere. Where the person can come on and you can find in your local area when a training is, or you can help organize a training, or you can create a chapter. I mean, people who want to get involved, and this is happening all over the United States now. Why I'm pushing this fundraiser and why I'm pushing this awareness campaign is people are becoming more and more aware of the Twilight Brigade and becoming more empowered to make a difference and to learn to be of service in a place where those families and those veterans and those families need the most help. TheTwilightBrigade.com and 1111campaign.org. I mean, if you go to Danyon, and there's thousands of things about me, good and bad. I like the bad stuff the best.
Oh, yes, you do. You're a Marine.
Hoorah! That's a fact.
A final question, because I think all that you have embodied in your own life, your whole life saga has been about dealing with helping others contend with the issue of death. Now, I heard you say a moment ago when I posed the issue of die from a cancer or die from a heart attack. You said, I'll take the heart attack, baby. I don't want that cancer thing. So I'm going to ask you, from your perspective, as well as those who may be getting this training, will these issues help you deal with your own death in a better and easier way? Or do you still feel that when a time ultimately comes for you, you're going to have to jump through the hoop? Are you already at acceptance? Are you already there?
Oh, I'm past acceptance.
You are past acceptance. Very good answer. Okay.
Death never happens, Dennis. Everything that you've ever heard about death never happens. It never happens. When you take your last breath on this side, you awake in another, you open your eyes in another world. It's instantaneous. And that world is a magnificent and wondrous place. What I'm trying to do is help the transition from this one to the next one more pleasant, more aware, and more cognitive for the person that's making that transition. And most importantly, to create closure. The biggest problem we have is those who are leaving usually don't have enough time to have closure, and those who are staying behind never have closure. And without closure, the person that's leaving doesn't care. Once they leave here, they're in that world of magnificence. But the people who stay behind linger, and they wonder, and they always think of what should I have done, what could I have done, and what did I not do that I could have done. The Twilight Brigade training takes care of that. It teaches you every step of the way to make sure you get done and the family gets done what is so important to that person who is between this world and the next.
Let me say this. We've got just a moment or two before our time is out of here. Obviously, I wish you such success. I'm hoping that the responses to your requests for help go out and that you are just inundated by people who want to help.
Thank you.
You're going to have a more formal at 11/11. Are you going to be like someplace in Washington, D.C. launching this, or is this launch going to be...
I'm going to be... This launch is going on actively. I mean, I have a lot of support. I'm really pleased at what's happening now as people begin to become aware that they can make a difference in ending conflict and being supportive. We have no choice but to step up to the plate. I mean, we sit as a nation on the precipice of a world war or world peace or the continuous term terrorism. If we don't step up and empower ourselves, and if we don't do this, where the next couple of years will be more horrendous than anything we've been through in the last 60 years. This is a necessity. But I will be at the West Los Angeles VA, and I usually spend 11/11 making rounds and going to visit, and every other year I spend Thanksgiving through New Year's. More people leave this world between Thanksgiving and New Year's, Christmas, holiday blues than any other period. And I sit in...
Daniel, you're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come back, please, sometime after 11/11. Maybe we'll catch you on the West Coast. I don't know, but you got to promise to come back.
I will do whatever it is that makes you happy, Dennis.
I'll be talking to Beth. We'll arrange it. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, and may everyone who's listening to this please support 1111campaign.org, and thank you for being alive and well and living in America.
Okay, so be it. There you have it, folks. What an interesting discussion today. Pick up on it. Go to those websites, twilightbrigade.com and 1111campaign.org. More on this subject is up and coming. Till then, this is Dr. Dennis Courtney with Daniel Brinkley saying so long for AM Impact on Your Health.
AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, M.D., Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an